Hey everyone, it's Michael Zipursky and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have Nabeel Mahmood joining us. Nabeel, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Michael.
Yeah, so Nabeel, you are a technologist, a futurist. You serve on boards, you're a keynote speaker. You're also the CEO of Mahmood, which is your strategy and kind of IT consulting firm. In addition to other things that you also do, which we'll get into, you certainly have, it looks like a very busy schedule. I thought we'd start off by exploring something that is written in kind of wherever you see your bio, whether it's on your website or LinkedIn and so forth. But you say that your career is really driven by one question, and that question is, what's next? Can you speak to what does that question mean to you? How has it played kind of a role in your life? And just how do you think about that question of what's next?
Yeah, so I get that asked quite a bit. I think it was not necessarily just a marketing play, but a very, very curious personality whereby that keeps driving me. So for instance, I was doing a keynote a few weeks ago, and I was asked a similar question. And back in the day, I remember when Bluetooth did not exist and you're driving across on Highway 5 down in California, I'd be like, wouldn't it be kind of nice if you were to actually have a device that you can just talk into versus putting it right next to your ear? So that was that first next as a good example. In technology, for instance, security started becoming a concern. So what's next? Multi-factor authentication. Technology started getting adopted whereby it was really designed by engineers. And, we like things very, very simple, but that simplicity is just from an engineering mindset. What's next is basically the user experience and the user adoption. So to answer that question, the what next is really how do we make it better and how do we grow and scale it?
When you say the word what's next, I mean, to me, I think that's a great prompt to kind of pause and future cast a little bit or think about like, well, what could this mean and how might that impact or influence the environment or the ecosystem that it's in? But it's still a big question. Is there a framework or a way that you take that question, which is a big question of what's next? And is there anything that you follow to help you to get clear on the answer to what's next or what things might actually look like?
Well, I wish I had all those answers, right? I mean, it's still a part of discovery and exploring what is next. The way I go about it is like my mindset is, what is achievable based on the knowledge that I've got and people that I'm surrounded by. So that defines that next phase, and then you just reverse engineer it from there on. But the bigger question of what's next, I mean, that's still yet to be discovered. I mean, we are still trying to figure out if there is life on Mars.
Right.
That is what's next. So how do we get there? What do we need to do to get there? I mean, there is a sequence of things that need to be accomplished to get us to that next phase.
Right.
And it's a lot of steps.
Yeah. So I really want to dig into kind of how you got to where you are, your progression and journey into building a successful consulting business. But before we do that, I'd love just to kind of dig a little bit deeper on this question and concept of what's next. And I'm wondering, you've given a couple of examples of how you apply this, before Bluetooth was around, and wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to hold your phone up to your ear, not to mention the danger of, what that causes in terms of driving and so forth. But can you share maybe an example of how you apply this question of what's next, either to your own consulting business or maybe even to a client's business directly, just so that we can make it a little bit more tangible for people and maybe help them to see an example of how they might be able to bring that into their own business?
Wow. I never thought of it that way. I think it's probably just muscle memory, but we'll try with an example here. I was doing some consulting work for a company that was involved in discrete manufacturing, and they had been building buildings the conventional way. They had been hiring human capital the conventional way. And the what next proposition that popped up was, wouldn't it be nice to actually introduce machine learning and automation and robotics, not necessarily reducing the human reliance, but increasing efficiencies. So, I did not start thinking around the lines of, Industry 4.0 or IoT and whatnot, but it was really more about process improvement and leveraging technology. whereby it will make life easy and we can run 24/7, 365 without significant human capital investment. And in doing so, we saw a lot of process improvements. We saw a lot of technology adoption. We saw a lot of efficiency, and where the shareholders and the ownership was happy was the bottom line, that we don't have to have people working 24/7, 365. So you eliminate a lot of the concerns as it entails to benefit security, as it entails to people making mistakes, right? So the what next process was, it would be kind of nice to actually start thinking around the lines of automating and being more efficient. And then there was a lot of other things that came about from that experience.
Yeah, it feels to me like this question of what's next is really an opportunity for all of us to challenge kind of the conventional wisdom or the status quo. Like everything that we currently do, or the work that we do with clients, instead of just accepting the way that things are done today, just asking like, well, is there a different way? Is there a better way? Is there maybe an adjustment that nobody's even thought of before? Like, how do you approach that? Or I'm wondering if you think about it in the same way, or is there a different way that you kind of approach this question when you're doing work on your own business, but also working with clients?
Yes, I mean, I'm being a mathematics major, there's more than one way of solving an equation. That's the way I look at it. And if we keep on doing the same thing, we shouldn't be expecting different results. So that quantifies or classifies that what's next mindset or that approach. Why aren't we sending out handwritten notes anymore? We live in an electronic world. So what's next is text messages. What's next is collaboration tools and emails, and a different experience altogether. I mean, just in itself, like what I'm talking about here, as far as collaboration tools are concerned, I think emails are gone. They will be gone pretty soon. So what's next is collaboration platforms such as Microsoft Teams or Slack and others, whereby you can unify that user experience and make it easy, so you're not jumping from application layer to an application layer, and you have them focused. Because right now, you might have 10 applications running on the back end and trying to do the job of 10 different people. Well, you can have one application running and you can do the job with 10 people. That's communication 4.0. That's what I believe is what's next.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of smiling as you were saying that, because I think about, for my generation, email is still such a big part of kind of the day-to-day, or just a tool that we all use. But I'm reminded of like younger cousins or family members who grew up in the generation where like they didn't really use email. And so email is still something that is it's not that it's foreign to them, but it's just not something that they use a lot. They're much more text messages, social platforms, or so it's very interesting to think about it in that way. So let's transition then to your journey. Nabeel, you were the Chief Information Officer at Maxco Supply until about 2018, I believe. But it looks from kind of the research that we did that you were also running or starting to run kind of your own consulting business, or taking on client projects and work during that time. Can you kind of talk about the transition that you were making of kind of going from being an executive into starting your own consulting business?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. When I was actually at Maxco, I'd been asked by a few friends and peers to help them with their businesses, whether it be in organizational change management or information technology. And that's how it ended up, whereby I started a consulting firm, going on 8.5, 9 years now.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that point in time, I was still trying to figure out, what am I doing with my life? I mean, the corner office sounds very good. It's fun. And in a lot of ways, it's actually fairly easy as well, whereby, you're going to work at 7:30, 8 a.m. in the morning, and you're done at 6 or 7 at night. That's about it. But I needed something that was more than that. I needed more excitement and identifying challenges, and not just that, but fixing or trying to fix those challenges. And that really came through that consulting engagement. I've been a corporate boy for a long time, or actually most of my career, till that opportunity came about. And it really came through people in the industry, whereby they encouraged me to start a consulting firm.
Okay, so you were really kind of pulled towards consulting based on the people around you that knew you and kind of what you had done or what you were known for, and then your desire to have bigger challenges or not just to kind of do the same thing over and over again.
Correct. Yeah, and then a part of it was also flexibility and staying in front of technology, or staying, just being on the bleeding edge is what I call it.
Right.
Being the futurist, so just staying ahead of everybody. I mean, that's really the exciting part, whereby you end up being in the defining stages versus being on the implementing or using stage.
And how did you manage the actual transition? So I'm kind of speaking to those that are also executives right now or working in an organization, and like you, for their own reasons, they're likely thinking about transitioning into consulting. Maybe they're already doing some, or maybe they just want to begin consulting. Can you kind of talk about maybe how you decided to make that transition? Was it when you had enough income coming in from consulting clients to replace the executive income, or did you go about it some other way? But just take us back to how you navigate that transition, and then if there's anything that you feel maybe you could have done differently or would have done differently with the benefit of hindsight.
So my situation was slightly different. I mean, I had a great job. I was doing the consulting for fun and just helping friends out or peers out in the industry. My reason for doing this full time was primarily driven because of the fact that I flatlined. I had 2 heart attacks. I was dead on arrival, and I needed a career change. As a matter of fact, where I was at in my point of life was that I was done working. I did not want to work for anyone. I died. I had a second lease on life, and I had packed my bags and left California and relocated to Hawaii just because of that. I needed a change. And long story short is, I actually did not want to work. I was ready to sail away in the sunset. And I tried that for a while. As a matter of fact, I tried that for a week. And then one of my clients back then called me and said that they needed help. And I was finding every possible excuse just to get out of it, because I really wanted to take some serious time and be on a sabbatical. But the project seemed to be very interesting, and I took that opportunity. And the next thing you know, I've not looked back at it. I think if it wasn't for the health reasons, I'll still be sitting in a corner office somewhere right now. But it changed life in a lot of positive ways, whereby it gave me the opportunity and freedom and flexibility to be creative and look ahead versus look behind. One of the things that I would say I've really learned through this transition is that the typical corporate culture is training us and even the executives to look behind us, not look ahead. And being on this side of space, whereby running a decent consulting firm, we are looking ahead. What's done is done. It's water under the bridge. Let's figure out what's tomorrow. How do we fix that? How do we scale up and develop sustainable infrastructures?
So you had a very significant health scare. I'm wondering if you could kind of take us to that time, and of course, just sharing whatever you're comfortable sharing. But is there anything that you feel maybe you could have done differently that would have, like, I don't know if it's just a genetic thing, or, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but kind of take us back to that time. What was going on in your life, in work? Because you mentioned at one point that the corporate kind of executive role was easy. I think you mentioned your words, it was relatively easy. So what was going on that you think kind of contributed to having that health scare?
The job in itself was fairly easy. The complexity comes in from the human element, rather I call it the emotional element. Whereby it was very much so stress driven because of the politics and bureaucracy and making sure that everybody is happy, you're saying the right thing, well, at least what the society tells us to tell everybody, even though you might not believe in it being the right thing. It was, genetics are a part of the issue, but they are not the entire issue. It's the lifestyle, the stress that we tend to live in. And I've learned a lot, continue to learn a lot about myself, and I think a part of the issue that I had and this health scare that was caused was because of the fact that I lost my voice in corporate culture and I internalized everything.
Mm,
And then I've got to put this happy face for PR purposes and in
right.
saying things that I probably did not believe in 100%, whether it be internally to the organization, the shareholders, the board, or even front facing with clients. And walking away from it and being myself and embracing my voice and telling people the way I feel about something is much relieving. So to answer your question, losing your voice and internalizing everything was the root cause, in my opinion. It was just the stress in the lifestyle.
Yeah. You mentioned that you had this plan to, to kind of take a long sabbatical, or just a really a good reset, right, for your mind, for your body. But then you got this call from a client wanting to reel you back in, and I'm wondering, how did you think about that, or how did you ensure that you wouldn't just end up in the same kind of situation again? So you went from a very serious health scare to saying, I need time to recharge and refresh, and then you get pulled right back into another potentially demanding client engagement. What was your thought process? Were there any kind of guidelines or guardrails that you put up to ensure that you wouldn't just get pulled right back into a similar kind of environment and experience, and so that your health would be at the forefront?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got some hard and fast rules that I've set. There is
Let's hear them. Yeah.
there is my me time, whereby I'm an early riser. I've always been an early riser. So typically the first hour of the day, which is roughly between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m., it's my me time. That's when I plan my day. That's when I have actually really a one-on-one with me, is the way I look at it. Like, what did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? How are you going to contribute? How are you going to give back? And it's no longer really about me, as in, how much money you're going to make, but it's about me in a lot of ways, whereby, are you going to be happy with the decisions that you're going to make? Are you giving back enough, or are you just in the pursuit of money? So as long as that's addressed, and I've got a good goal in front of me, then it's a good day. But I've set some hard and fast rules, and some of them are: I do not engage with people I do not like, personally and professionally. I tell you the way it is. So call me Donald Trump or whatever the case might be. But you know what? I rather experience the pain today versus be in pain for the next decade of my life. So being honest and transparent is imperative. And I don't have to answer the emails or phone calls all the time. I enjoy working, and people that you're working with, as long as it's not work, and you know that you're contributing and you're the change agent and you're having fun, I can work 24/7, 365. But the minute it becomes work, I'm out of there. It's got to be fun. It's got to be enjoyable. And like, you want to come to work, you want to hang out with people, you want to feel that you're being appreciated, and you are valuable for that project or that job or whatever you're involved in. So yeah, I mean, I don't answer phone calls after 6 p.m. You've got to be in my favorites to be able to get through to me. But everything can wait. Everything can wait. The world is going to operate with or without us. And you've got to take some time out for yourself, your family, your friends, and you got to live a little. Go out, have some fun, go play golf, run, go snorkeling, diving, whatever your passion is. Go do the things that you enjoy the most. And that's what's going to make fun, life a lot more fun. And, also you're going to come across as really true and passionate in what you do.
Right. So I love that, Nabeel. And I think that probably many people who are listening and joining us right now are likely thinking to themselves, I also have those same beliefs or same kind of desires. Yet oftentimes there's a bit of a disconnect between that belief internally, and where I see a lot of people that they don't necessarily communicate that to the client. And so it takes them only so far. And then the expectation from the client is they're not on the same page. And the consultant or the business owner kind of gets pulled into things that maybe are now not in alignment with what they originally set out. So how do you approach that? Is this a conversation that you have with your clients right up front? Is it in an agreement, or do you just push it forward, and if it goes off in a direction that you don't want, you try and get it back, or you just walk away? How do you kind of navigate the setting of expectations?
It's a combination of all of things that you just mentioned. So, as much as the client is qualifying you to be a consultant to them, you've got to do the same thing. Whereby, is it the right relationship to engage in? Once you get past that, what I typically do is set up a clear set of engagements in a document, get that signed off, and then that gets translated into a binding agreement for whatever that engagement is, or whatever that length of that engagement is, whereby you are explicitly clear on the rules of engagement. And then, people have a tendency of going back to what they did and how they did it. And that's normal. You just got to remind them, this is where I draw the line. This is where the boundary is. I mean, I'll do anything legally, but there are limitations and there are boundaries. Don't expect me to answer your call in the middle of the night. Unless it's an emergency or depending on what the project is. But those boundaries needs to be established and practiced thoroughly.
Right. So today, if I go to the Mahmood Consulting website, I see that you have 3 other, I believe, kind of principal consultants or partners that are in the business. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of talk a little bit about the team and how it's structured, the different roles, how many people are part of the team, and then just why you set it up that way.
Yeah, so basically to give you an idea what we do, so we do a lot of stuff in information technology. So from a site assessment, a physical site like greenfield identification, making sure that that's the right place to build, to designing, building a physical data center to or a building, depending on what needs to be done, to doing all the electrical, mechanical, structural, networking design and build for the clients. We are the only firm. The unique identifier for us is that we can take from the physical layer of the design build to the technology stack as well. So all of your networking, your computing, your tech stack, your voice, your connectivity, application layer, and security is what we address. One of the cool things that we are proud to do is we do audits, assessment, certification, compliance, and SEC filing, anything information technology related. So in doing so, we get to have the opportunity touching everything, what I call it, from grid to chip, right? Or grid to bit rather, whereby the team is inclusive of people that are electrical engineers, mechanical, structural engineers. We've got auditors on the team as well, we do forensics, for instance, that nobody else does. For insurance or legal reasons. So the team is very diverse with a lot of skill sets, from legal to real estate acquisition to financials. Yeah.
And are most of the team, are they contractors aside from like a smaller core team, or can you just talk about how the business is actually structured?
Yeah, so the smaller, the core team is very small. There's about 6 of us in total. Everybody else we contract out depending on the opportunity. Right. But those half a dozen people have a skill set that's fairly diverse, and they touch a lot of areas. So basically, we are able to communicate and speak the language of that particular vertical that might fall under our subdomain. So, okay. I don't have attorneys on hand, but between me and Dave Hutchinson, for instance, I think between the 2 of us, we have reviewed enough legal contracts that we can get ourselves into trouble. But, as things progress, we need to engage, legal, then we've got a couple of partners that we work with that will come on a case-by-case basis. The same thing with finance, right? So, I'm fairly decent. I sit on a board for a publicly traded bank. I've got a decent understanding of finance, but I'm not a CPA. I'm not your CFO. But we've got, associates that we work with that we can collaborate with and bring them on board as needed. The advantage heretofore really is that we are speaking their language, and when it needs to be translated into another vertical, we can do that. Versus it getting lost. And that's a part of the challenge a lot of the organizations have, is that their language does not get translated or streamlined into business units within the organization. And what we're able to do is actually break all those barriers, because we were able to speak all those languages at a high enough level and a technical and tactical level that we can translate that for the average user base, and then again engage resources as needed.
And how do you think about, so it sounds like, you have this core team, which is rather, quite small and tight, right? Intentionally so. And you bring in all these experts, right? Kind of as contractors on an as needed basis. How do you think about that as opposed to, what some larger consulting firms do, which is to essentially just build out a lot of full-time people, lots of associates, right? It's all under kind of one roof. And so I can see some potential positives, but also some downsides to that. I'm just wondering, why go the kind of the model and structure where you have a lot of contractors as opposed to just building out a much larger, firm?
Yeah, so I mean, for starters, I don't have the headaches that a larger firm would have.
That's a big one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, you don't have to have that high capital expense of human resources. And in our case, our strategy has been that we want to be as bespoke, as nimble as possible, right? And we want to be able to pass the savings on to the client. I mean, I'm not going to charge what EY is going to charge,
right?
Whereby it's a significant savings for the client. And then, we get to work with fun people as well. You get to know these people on a real, in a personal basis. So, if there's an opportunity and if I can bring them on board full time, that they can justify their job and I don't have to ever look back, yes, sure, we will do that. But that comes with time, and I'm in no rush.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to kind of the guardrails or kind of values that you've established and that you bring into all the work that you do. So that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that when you first started the consulting business, it came from your own network. Let's zoom forward to today. And I'm wondering, how do you approach, what are you currently doing as a company when it comes to your sales pipeline and kind of client pipeline? What are your marketing activities? How are you approaching bringing in new clients and just making sure that pipeline is always robust?
So we are not a sales company. I mean, I don't know. It's probably really sad to say that we are never going out and selling aggressively. We do not, as a matter of fact, market at all either. How our engagements come forth is by market credibility. And, a part of it is being in front, being relevant. And the way we stay in front and relevant is by speaking engagements. By making sure that we are presenting the right content, and we are in front of the right people. So doing adverts, that's not us. I mean, I'm of the old mindset whereby it's the strongest marketing ever is your word and your experience. I think what we refer to as in America is the word of mouth. So if I am able to deliver a good product or a good service, or have my end user have a good experience and we have contributed to their success, they'll 10 people. And even if I go with the 80-20 rule, those two are going to make the phone call and one of them is going to sign up. So I'm content with that. We don't need to be the biggest, but we need to be the best at what we do.
You mentioned that you are intentional in making sure that you deliver and communicate the right content to the right people. Can you just walk me through how you actually think about that? What does the right content mean? And what is, when you say the right people, what is that kind of like physically, or just make it a little bit more tangible? And I'd love to just kind of dive into your thought process around what does the right content and the right people mean to you?
The right content, in my experience, is eliminating any fluff that's caused by marketing.
Tell me more.
I don't want to read the short print. I want to understand what your use case is and share just enough of a story that's valuable to you. See, I've been an executive. I've been in the C-suite for a major part of my career. And one of the things that I've learned about myself is that I've got the attention span of a bird.
Yeah.
Give me 5 seconds. Tell me what's important and why do I need it. Eliminate all the fluff. The minute you're going to start fluffing it up for me and putting all these, ponies on top of a present that's worthless, you're gonna lose me. I have zero interest for that. Tell me the way it is, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, and give me real numbers, real data, real live experiences. So I'm gonna give you an example here. So we talk about you know, carbon neutrality. Okay. There's so much fluff with carbon neutrality that's been, you know, shared in the mass market. And it's really focused, all that research is actually focused off of the hyperscalers. So what the likes of Amazon are doing, or Microsoft and Google and Oracle are doing. Well, guess what? They're less than 1% of the enterprise base. What they're doing does not apply to 99% of the computing user base. The amount of resources that these folks have, 99% of the enterprise does not. So let's get into the real world. Let's address what the 99% of the enterprise space needs and what do they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that concept itself to me is very powerful. It's very compelling because instantly it feels to me like you're sharing something that goes against what most people likely believe. I would imagine that most people would initially think that the hyperscalers, so you know, Google and Amazon and so forth, are the majority, but in fact, you're saying in this case they're the minority. So that would get people's attention and then want them to learn more. And by sharing a very kind of compelling data point like that, it also further demonstrates your authority and your expertise because you know something that most people don't know.
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nabeel. You're going to say something?
Yeah. So, you know, and going back to the right audience, I mean, we don't want everybody and anybody. You know, I mean, are you a CEO or a CIO or a CTO that's willing to make the changes? Are you the one that's going to say, give me the auto magic button, or you're willing to sit down with me and work with me on identifying what the good, the bad, and the ugly is? And are you willing to make the change? So if you have that kind of a personality, you're the right audience for us. I don't want to be talking to you whereby I feel I'm talking to the wall. I mean, yeah, sure, the money is good, but is that the good reason for us to engage now? You can just send me a check. I'll take that, but I don't want to waste my time or your time in trying to convince you if you don't have the mindset of making that change. So in finding the right audience, you know, one of the first qualifiers that we've got is, are you, Mr. End User, you know, willing to be the change agent yourself? You want to change your company, you want to change your processes. Are you the first one to be the one to acknowledge that the change is you, not the rest of the company?
And how do you do that? I mean, is this when you're having an initial communication with somebody, or does this happen even before you have a conversation with someone? Just practically, how do you actually try and kind of shake the branch of the tree and see if, you know, the fruit falls or not? Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the best way to put that is that, you know, 10% of my job is to play Dr. Phil or Tony Robbins. It's psychological, really, at the end of the day. Whereby, you know, you're just observing and following and how they do things and what do they do. I mean, if I ever get an opportunity to take somebody out for golf, those 4 hours spent will tell me if I want to be around them and want to do business with them or not.
Very interesting. So Nabeel, I have a whole bunch of additional questions here, but I want to be respectful of the time that we have in the calendar for today. I'd be very interested to know, I mean, you talked about your routine, your morning routine. I typically ask people about some of the habits that they bring into their life that they feel really contribute to the success or the focus, the performance. You talked about kind of your morning routine. Is there anything else that you would add to that you just feel in terms of a habit that is consistent and that really has a big impact? Any other information or anything else you'd like to share around that?
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of do the same thing to question myself, what did I do? And was it worth it? Yeah, and I think you know, as far as routine is concerned, I've learned this, or what I practice quite a bit. Are we taking more than we are giving back? I mean, that's nonstop in my mind, and I'm questioning that nonstop every day.
How do you apply that question? Sorry to interrupt, but just to kind of explain that a bit more, would you apply that from the perspective of in general to the world or to the community, or is that even more granular in terms of clients and projects? Like, what's the context for that question?
Well, I mean, I would say I started more of a reverse engineering approach, whereby am I personally taking more than I deserve? And the mindset really is like, you can only put so much food on your plate, and you can only eat so much of that plate. So when is enough, right? And do I have the desire to give back the access that I've consumed or gathered? So that goes back to the amount of projects that we are taking, the amount of work that we are doing or putting ourselves into, and how much of my time is actually being spent into philanthropy.
Got it. Nabeel, one final question here before we wrap up, and we'll make sure people can learn more about you and where they should go to do so. But I'm very interested with all the different experiences that you have to this point and the journey you are still on. What's one book that you have either read or listened to in the last maybe 6 or 12 months that just has really left or had a big impact on you and that you would recommend to others?
Yeah, so the book I would highly recommend is 3 Cups of Tea.
Okay, can you just explain very briefly what that's about? Because I haven't heard that recommendation before.
Yeah, so this gentleman was actually a nurse in America, ended up, he was a mountaineer, ended up climbing, I think, Mount Everest, and he got sick in the Himalayas. And the thing that really hit me hard was that one cup of tea, when you're invited in that culture, you are an acquaintance. 2 cups of tea, you're a friend, and 3 cups of tea, you're family. So, I think I've learned to compartmentalize my relationships as well, according to that. And, also learned that it's about surrounding yourself with the right people and engaging in right conversations. And it's not just about money. I mean, it's the pursuit of happiness and the ability to give back. Where I'm at in my life, I'm actually on my 3rd lease on life. We didn't get to talk about that. But this is after a quadruple bypass and 48 hours of life support.
Wow.
So it's not about how much we're going to gather. It's about how much we're going to give back. And are we helping others, and are we creating the leaders for tomorrow? Especially with our kids, are we going to give them a world that's peaceful, or the chaos that we are living in? So that's kind of like the premise of that book. I mean, it's very soft written, it's an easy read, and it just connected me and hit me at a very different point.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna link that up in the show notes, and it's going on my list to check out. So Nabeel, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today and spending some time with us and sharing just a bit of your story. I know there's so much more to unpack, but I look forward to continuing the conversation. For those that want to learn more about you, about Mahmood, and just everything else you have going on, because we didn't talk about, you have your venture side of a business as well. You have a podcast. You're involved in a lot of different things, but where would be like the one website or one place that people should go to learn more about you and your work?
I think the simplest one would be mahmood.one. That's ONE. And just follow me on social platforms. It's Nabeel Mahmood. That's my handle.
Okay. All right. We'll link that up. Again, thanks so much for coming on.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for having me.